Converted man here. Okay, it's time to do something. Let's do something. Gotta analyze something, anything. Give me something to analyze.
Everyone knows that evolution is a lie because Jesus said that God hates evolution and Adam talked to a snake, and that's why everyone is born evil unless they love Jesus. So what I want to know is 5 questions for atheists. If people came from chimpanzees, how come chimpanzees have got hairy faces and big ears?
Yeah, I'm not going to do that video. What about this, though? This is from Recovery from Religion and American Atheist. Sounds promising. There's a bunch of different groups I'm aware of. So let's see. This video can't be all that bad. Or maybe it's just a talk on skepticism or refining reason. That sounds reasonable. Side 10, Bruggencate, however you pronounce it. I can't do this alone. I need somebody epic to help me out. But who?
Jesus Christ is King.
Alright, I have to give you all some notes on this before we get into this further. So formal fallacies will be denoted by an F in parentheses, and concerning formal fallacies, I hope you do recall that formal fallacies are not relevant to whether or not we should be skeptical of the conclusions of the argument, but what they do indicate is the person giving the argument has failed for whatever reason to remember the way that argumentation functions. So there's a number of different various formal fallacies that Cy will be performing throughout this debate, and we'll just be telling you what they are and counting them up, and as well as the informal fallacies, which do matter for us being skeptical or not of the conclusions. Also, I'm going to save some time by having some fallacies listed on top of Cy as he's making them, so I may or may not have commentary for every single fallacy. Otherwise, this might take days to do. Alright, everyone got it? Great, on with the video.
And I thank him for allowing this debate to take place tonight. Is it reasonable to believe that God exists? Yes. Yes, it is. I'm going to argue tonight that not only is it reasonable to believe that God exists, but that denying belief in God reduces one's worldview to absurdity. Well, why is it reasonable to believe that God exists? Quite simply, because it's true that he exists.
Alright, some of you might be surprised to not see the counter continuing to grow. There's a number of potential fallacies, and I don't really think I've really explained a potential fallacy to anybody. It's a term that I've come up with. It's completely my own invention. Either there is a fallacy or there isn't. But because of how strict I tend to analyze things, there are times when I overanalyze and I identify something as a fallacy, but I realize I can't really make a very good case for it being a fallacy. So I just say, well, it's probably a fallacy. It's potentially a fallacy. So he's done that a number of times. He said, yes, there's a God twice, and he asked a meaningless question, and he asserts something, again, without an argument. And so we have a number of potential informal fallacies and some formal fallacies, but I'm just going to ignore all of the potentials and only hit the nail on the head when it is something that I can readily defend as being a definite fallacy.
Here's my argument. Premise 1. It's reasonable to believe that which is true.
We have here a formal fallacy of improper structure. You're supposed to define the words before you use them. This eliminates natural language problems, or at least lessens the natural language problems. Truth is a nebulous word. Cy does define it later, but that's not when you're supposed to define it. You're supposed to define it now. And it might seem like a bit of a nitpicking, but that's exactly what the formal fallacies are, is these are the rules, follow them. Now, in all fairness and for complete transparency issues, Matt does have a formal fallacy. He fails to structure his argumentation into premises. So you could also say improper formatting for Matt's side. So hey, look, I'm fair, I'm balanced, I'm not the Fox factor. I actually care about logic, and if somebody makes an error, I'm going to point it out. By the way, that's the only error that I can think of offhand that Matt makes. So, if anyone wants to pay me like $20, I'll analyze Matt's side of things too, okay? Yeah, I know, I'm charging for analysis now. It's a new idea that I just came up with. Anyways, back to the video.
Premise 2, it's true that God exists.
And now it's time for D. Converted Man loses it into those totally insane and nuts and crazy and stuff. One exclamation points. Dear Finite Atticus, you are wrong about the turtles. Everything you said was wrong about the turtles, and I'm right about the lobsters. This is my open letter to you. Yeah, I was thinking about when you were putting on clothes, and I gotta confess something. I've reversed the video so I could watch you taking off the clothes, and yeah, it started to make me sweat a little bit. Anyway, so look, if we can put this whole turtle lobster thing behind us or in front of us, wherever you'd like it, I'm wondering if you would do me a big favor. Could you dress up like Misty for me? I really like Misty, or Sailor Mercury. I like her too. There's a lot of anime girls that I like. I know you're a guy, but the thing is, if you dress like a girl, this will be really hot. And you'll be like a Fututori? How do you spell that? I don't know. Anyways, love you. Signed, D. Converted Man. P.S. Don't put this in the video analysis that I'm doing about Side 10 Bruggencate. Don't remind myself to do that. Yes, good idea. Now, back to the video!
Premise 2, it's true that God exists.
You just created 4 logical fallacies and 2 formal fallacies in that single sentence. Wow. That's really just bad. So, let me be fair, let's put the premises on the screen and talk about this. Okay, so P1, no problems there, except for the fact that true is a nebulous thing that he didn't define, but he does define it later, so it becomes not problematic after the fact. So, we'll just pretend that he didn't get that wrong and say that he did define true, and he defined true as real in reality. So another way to put it would be, it is reasonable to believe that which is real in reality, and then P2 would be, it's real in reality that God exists, which is your conclusion. So that's begging the question. So you can't get any further. You can't have your conclusion then be God exists, or that it's really real that God exists, or that it's true that God exists, or any other phrasing that you want. It would be reduced to, at best, a tautology. God exists because God is something that exists. That would be a tautology. A rock is a rock because it is a rock. It can't not be a rock because it is a rock. That's a tautology. A rock cannot be a cat. That's the rule of identity. It is what it is. It can't be something else. A rock exists because it does exist. There might not be any other reason for it. That might just be the brute fact of the way things are. Reality is real. That's a tautology. So, if this is a tautology, okay, let's see the truth table. So, a truth table is a thing we do in logic, and it's a more complicated thing that I don't really have time to explain in this particular video. In the description box below will be a link to carnatus.org video that explains it fairly well and fairly quickly. I will at some point in time make a longer video if a number of people find that to be something that they want me to do or whatever. Anyways, we don't have the truth table, so this isn't a tautology, so it does beg the question, and for that reason alone, we could dismiss this. But we have all these other fallacies as well. Woo!
Conclusion. Therefore, it's reasonable to believe that God exists.
So, no, with the conclusion, it doesn't follow, and it can't possibly follow. P2 had far too many fallacies for anything to come after it. We need to stop at P2 and go, well, This needs to be a conclusion, not a premise. There's too many things wrong with this. We haven't argued for it. It's begging the question. There's circular reasoning going on. There's a special knowledge claim, because how do you know that God exists? There's all of these problems. This would be a conclusion, not a premise.
Now, in order for an argument to be sound, it must not only be valid in form, but the premises must be true.
You don't have to explain that! Oh. By the way, William Lane Craig called. He wants his phrase back. He says that like every single time he debates. You don't need to explain it.
Now, I highly doubt that Matt is going to argue against the validity of the form of the argument or the truth of the first premise. It's reasonable to believe that which is true. I mean, that's the very definition of reason. The intellectual ability to apprehend the truth. See, I suspect that the disagreement is going to come from the second premise. Matt is going to want me to show that it's true that God exists. I mean, I've watched a lot of video with Matt recently, and truth is very important to him.
Today's debate will be sponsored by cherry picking. Cherry picking is the logical fallacy of choice.
I care about what's actually true.
My only concern is, or my primary concern is whether or not a belief's true.
I actually give a shit about whether or not something's true. Truth is the thing that I value most.
I think Side 10 missed his true calling. He should have been a cherry picker.
Matt values truth so much that he even put on a t-shirt. He wants to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. Well, so do I. And guess what? I say it's true that God exists. Therefore, it is true that God exists. My argument is sound and the debate is over. How does that work for you, Matt?
Saying something doesn't make it true.
There's a word that I'm thinking of that describes Side 10 Bruggencate, and it starts with an A, and it ends with an E, and it's two words kind of mashed together, and it also describes a body part that one has, and it kind of pretty much describes how Sai is treating Matt.
Saying something doesn't make it true. Well, how's this? It's true for me that God exists, therefore it's true that God exists.
I'm talking about the idea that something could be true because it's true for you. That's the thing that I'm actually rejecting.
Six logical fallacies of cherry picking.
Just because it's true for me doesn't mean it's true. Oh well. I strongly feel it's true that God exists, therefore God exists.
Just because you feel it strongly doesn't mean that it's true.
Not feelings either.
Alright, mental note to self. Next time I make a video on ethics, don't talk about free will.
Well, lots of people believe that God exists, and they're very sincere, and it's really looked down upon to not believe that God exists. So that must make it true. Right?
The truth is not impacted in any way by the number of people that believe the claim, or the sincerity of their belief, or how much it's looked down upon.
Somebody draw me a picture of a catapult launching a pancake onto Side 10 Bruggencate's head, please. I can't draw very well, so somebody out there do that, and it will be in my next video.
Oh man. Not because I said it, not because it's true for me, not because I feel it, not because others believe it, not because the belief is sincere, or because its denial is frowned upon. Come on. Help me out here, Matt.
When we're talking about truth and the fact that truth has to exist independent of our knowledge of it, yes, that's true.
Oh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Truth exists independent of our knowledge of it.
For whatever reason, the Beatles said number 9 in one of their songs. I don't understand why they did this, but it's a thing.
Perhaps at this point, a definition of truth would be in order. How does Matt define truth?
Combo fallacy!
Truth is that which comports with reality.
Truth is that which comports with reality. Great. Wait a minute. Whose view of reality?
Mega stupidity!
Open Gangnam Style.
In my view of reality, God exists. And I really, really believe that my view of reality is the right view. Does that make it true?
You can believe that naked pixies whisper in your ear and clean out your sink at night if you want to. But it has no bearing at all on the objective reality that we actually have to deal with.
Let's take a moment to talk about the topic at hand, because I want to demonstrate how easy it is to win one side of this topic. It's so ridiculously easy that I'm going to do it. I'm going to win Seitan Bruggencate's argument for him. Is it reasonable to believe God exists? Yes. For many people, it is reasonable to believe God exists because we are pattern-seeking creatures that seek agency even when no agency is necessary to explain a phenomenon. Because we are pattern-seeking creatures, we will see a pattern even if there is or is not a pattern there. And that pattern will most likely be an agency of some sort. So we would expect that a large number of humans would see pattern, and that pattern we call God. That is the ultimate agency that we have come up with to explain a wide variety of phenomenon that, for whatever reason, it's just easier to explain with a God than it is to check into further. We are not built to be skeptical. So, therefore, it is reasonable for many people that God exists. There you go. I win. Now, on the flip side of that, the argument against that would be, yes, it's reasonable for them to believe it, but once we begin to educate people, then it becomes less and less reasonable to believe in a God, because if there's an alternate explanation for a phenomenon, like there's a naturalistic explanation for that phenomenon, then we would have to be skeptical because there's no way to know if it's God or not. So that would be the flip side of that particular argumentation. But still, it's easy, Sai!
Oh, okay, I get it. Objective reality. What's really real. Not just because I believe it. Truth must be that which corresponds to objective reality. Well, that makes sense, actually. Just because somebody high on drugs believes that there's snakes on the bed doesn't mean that there's actually snakes on the bed. In order to know if something's true, our internal beliefs must match what's actually true, what's actually real.
Wow, he actually said something that actually makes sense. Perhaps there is hope for this world. Perhaps there is.
I want my internal model of reality to match the actual reality I live in as best as possible.
Nope, I was wrong. We're screwed. Screw it. That's it. Give up. It's the Armageddon time. Forget it, everybody. I quit. That's it. I can't take it anymore. Oh, sorry. There's a limit of one deconverted man loses it per video, apparently. My director, who doesn't actually exist but I've made up to handily explain things to me from off camera and or off mic, has explained to me that there's only one allowed per video thing that I do. I have no idea what I was just talking about. Back to the video.
Of course he does. It has to match actual, objective, ultimate reality to be true. Matt cares about truth, so he must care about ultimate reality. Right?
I don't care whether this is the ultimate reality.
Oh, I see. It was all leading up to when you actually used the cherry picking for your side. Wow, it sure took you long enough. It took you that many cherry pickings to get to the point when you finally attack him with these cherry pickings that you've gotten. My word, you suck at this.
Wait, what? Matt doesn't care if this is the ultimate reality? Surely that was a slip of the tongue. Surely Matt must care a little bit about what's ultimately real.
Possibilities and reality. I don't care. Sorry, I just really don't care.
He really doesn't care.
Hey, lonely naturalist, you still haven't made that video that you said you were going to make for me. Hurry up!
Now, folks, that's a problem. Truth is that which is ultimately real, and Matt doesn't care what's ultimately real. Why is that? Why doesn't Matt care what's ultimately real?
My position is that, yes, we cannot distinguish whether or not, I can't distinguish whether the reality I experience is an ultimate reality. I could be in a matrix or a brain of that or pick any thought experiment you want.
Matt doesn't care what's ultimately real because he can't know what's ultimately real. You heard it. He could be a brain in a vat. According to Matt's worldview, he can only know that which is in his own brain. See, I'd even argue that point. But surely that would be absurd. I mean, isn't that solipsism?
Okay, so this is the linchpin. This is the combo fallacy that precept, at least in this case, rests upon. A special knowledge and straw man. Claim that you know what your opponent's worldview is, and then attack that worldview. You are a sophist. Now let me attack sophism. He may or may not be a sophist. We don't know. I don't know. Is he? Let's ask him. Let's find out. I don't know. Maybe he is. If he is, maybe he has an argument for it. But let him present that. This should be during your rebuttal to attack sophism if that's what he is. If that's what he's defending. If that's his argumentation. You take away this piece, this pigeonholing of your opponent into sophism, and the presuppositionalist is exposed for the charlatan that they are, which is nothing more than pointing to a book, declaring that the book is true, and declaring that things in the book confirm that the book is true, and declaring that the book told you that everyone knows that something is true, and declaring that that therefore is true. Nothing more than circular argumentation on top of circular argumentation on top of some more circular argumentation. So the presuppositionalist tries to dodge that bullet by pigeonholing their opponent into sophism and then attacking sophism.
Solipsism. A theory and philosophy that your own existence is the only thing that is real or that can be known. Well, that's nuts, right? I mean, anybody who claims to be a solipsist deserves to be mocked.
Rather than do that, I have an idea. Let's listen to their argument. Maybe they have a logically coherent argument. If not, then we have to be skeptical of the conclusion. Mocking them is irrelevant, but of course, this isn't anything other than a setup for yet another cherry picking.
Right?
And because I'm a solipsist, because I'm uncertain...
You're a solipsist?
I'm trapped like most people.
Mocked, and hung up on. Good job, Matt. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, if that were the case, not only could you not know ultimate reality, you'd have no basis for trusting the reality that you think you're experiencing.
I would rather see their argument, hear their argument, and try to understand their argumentation. Is it invalid? Is it valid? What is it? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How does that work? And I would like to engage in that. But Matt isn't a sophist. And at least I don't know if he is or isn't yet. That's up to him to tell me, and then I get to rebuttal against sophism based on his arguments. But cherry picking and saying, oh look, he mocked the sophist, isn't that funny, ha 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 ha. Oh, and he is a sophist. Oh, he's being a hypocrite, ha 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 ha. You know, it's pathetic. It's not argumentation. It's nothing. It's lacking of any actual substance here. Moving on.
I mean, you might think that you're in a room with blue walls when you're a brain in a vat in a room with orange walls. You see, I have watched a lot of Matt's videos, and he hangs up on a lot of people. Now, why would Matt hang up on the solipsist? Why would he hang up on the solipsist? I wonder.
We cannot ever solve the problem of hard solipsism, pretending that I'm claiming to be able to defeat hard solipsism. I have no solution to that.
Matt has no solution for solipsism.
Is reality real? Looks pretty real, feels pretty real, seems pretty real. Yes. Can we know that it's really real? I don't know. Sure, why not? I mean, I think that we can believe very strongly that it's really, really real. as far as I know, all of this is empirical evidence that proves that it's really real. Now, having said that, maybe my brain, is playing tricks on me. Maybe the colors that I perceive are not the real colors. Even though I can hold up something that's a color and name that color, to you it's a different color. Hey, this is black, and it's got this interesting texture. It's foam, and it's a packaging material, and now I made it into a sort of bitey monster thingy. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. But maybe what I see as black, you see as a different sort of black. And even though we can both call it black, your version of black isn't the same as my version of black. And we'll never know that. Some people see numbers or letters and see colors associated with them, or even smell smells, or both. Reality is something that our brain has to process, and we could go our whole lives with our brain processing reality slightly different than everyone else and not even know. That's an interesting phenomenon, but it seems that the majority of humans process reality in a similar fashion. Now, if we stopped there, I don't think that we could ever really be sure about anything. But we've developed a tool called science. And through the methodology of science, we can apply a filtering mechanism that helps us to say, yes, this is actually real. Yes, this is actually real. Yes, this is actually real. Now, could that filtering mechanism be part of my delusions? I don't know. I mean, I'd have to have a pretty good imagination to come up with something like that. I guess it could be, but I don't see any reason why I should think that that is the case. So, regarding this whole can we know reality is real thing, I kind of go, it's not interesting to me. It's outside the field of informal logic. We assume that reality is real, and that assumption is an a priori belief. It is a belief, and it's one based on empirical evidence, or what seems like empirical evidence, and that's good enough for me. Maybe it's not good enough for other people. I don't know. But it's not relevant because we're all stuck in that same spot. We're all trapped in the way our brains function and the way reality really is. We are all stuck in the same boat. There's no 2Qing your way out of this. If you and I are all in the Matrix or in a holodeck, there's no way to know that unless something malfunctions and we discover that that's the case. But then how do we know that that is the actual reality, and so on and so forth? How do we know we're not in a giant Truman Show? Well, we don't. But there's no reason to think that we are either. Just because you don't know doesn't mean that you believe that that is the case, which is something that Matt tries to get through Sai's head, but Sai's head is just way too impenetrable to get that concept through. I've made this analogy before, and I think it's a decent one. I might not know what 1,000,000 to the power of 1,000,000 is offhand, but I do know that the answer isn't 5. I know that there's a lot of numbers that it's not. But simply because I don't know doesn't mean that I believe that the answer is 45. So you can't assert that I do know something. That's just straw manning. That's just special knowledge. And that's what Sai does. Sai's solution to all of this is to say, God beamed information into my brain and said that it really is real. But if your brain is in a jar